All right, Team 30, the Golden State Warriors. Their offseason article will be up on Saturday morning. Here is their video for the four-time world champion Golden State Warriors. And I'm sure for you Golden State fans, that has a nice ring to it, especially when you were 15-50 2 years ago. You lose in the play-in last year to Memphis. And now you win in 6 games against the Boston Celtics here. So their offseason article will be up on Saturday. I think the easy thing for me to do is just talk about like expenses and a luxury tax and how much this team is going to pay or has paid in the future. And I say nonsense to that. If you have an owner in Joe Lakeup and their ownership group, and you have a great front office in Bob Myers, and they give you the resources to do that, and it's not reckless spending, you got the green light and the authority to do it here. And I think the interesting thing is, and we've heard a lot of different, takes as far as the cost and whether this team was bought or the price tag and how it's not fair to the other teams. 8 players on this roster were drafted either in the first or second round. The only big ticket number is Wiggins. We know how that happened in the trade with D'Angelo Russell. And this is an interesting scenario here because I think we're going to see a lot of this when we get closer to this collective bargaining agreement. What does this say that teams that draft and retain players for tax purposes, not for salary as it relates to the cap, maybe that counts as 50% towards the luxury tax or 75% of the luxury tax, and you give incentives to teams to retain their players. And in the case of the Golden State Warriors, they are being penalized because they've drafted well. Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Draymond Green, Jordan Poole, Kevon Looney, the young players. We don't even talk about James Wiseman, who was out all year, Jonathan Kuminga, Moses Moody. That is your group of 8 players that you've drafted. And why should Golden State have to pay $20 million per year tax-wise for Jordan Poole? Why shouldn't that be just $10 million? And I think that's going to be an interesting discussion as this collective bargaining negotiations ramp up during the summer and as we get closer to that December opt-out here, because I think the goal for the league should be to reward teams for drafting well and not to penalize them, because not every ownership group like Golden State can afford to keep them. Sometimes you are forced to make a decision here, or that player will go out and get an offer sheet and it's less desirable here. So as I said, when I open up, the cost of building through the draft is high, but the Warriors case, it's record breaking, right? They're penalized for drafting well. 8 players on homegrown contracts, $350 million in over $350 million in luxury tax and salary this year. We can get to $400 million, but why? Like, why should Golden State and any other team that drafts well, that doesn't go out and buy teams with cap space, and then certainly the Wiggins number would be fully taxed, but why do teams continually get penalized for drafting well? Why should Denver get penalized for drafting Jokic in the second round and Porter at 14 and Murray on the back end of the lottery? Why do teams continually to do that? And I think that is going to be an interesting discussion, as we said here. So that's my little rant on the Warriors and their luxury tax. And I can say, yeah, they're spending more than Oklahoma City and Orlando and Memphis combined here, but they drafted well and they retained their own players here. So as we head into the offseason, right, your big decisions, Andrew Wiggins and Jordan Poole. Without these 2 players, there is no championship. As great as Steph Curry is, as great as Draymond was, the revamped Klay Thompson, I know he struggled in Game 6. There is no championship if Kevin Durant doesn't agree to a sign and trade to go to Brooklyn, where he could have just gone there for cap space, and D'Angelo Russell goes to Golden State, and at the 2020 trade deadline before COVID hits. Can you imagine if COVID had hit and there's no trade deadline? Russell gets flipped for Wiggins and a future first that turns into Kuminga. There is no championship, Golden State fans, and I don't want to hear it, oh, we did it with Harrison Barnes. Well, yeah, Wiggins slides into the Harrison Barnes spot, and he's a better player right now. And it's something that many owners wouldn't be able to do, is kind of, go out and spend $30 million on D'Angelo Russell, knowing that Durant is gone, Clay is out, and this team, as I said 3 years ago, was not a play-in team, was not a playoff team here. They were a lottery team, even if Curry and Green were healthy through that year. So, two things: the Jordan Poole extension and the Andrew Wiggins extension. Wiggins has another year left on his contract. He can be extended for another 4 years. He is not a max player, despite him playing extremely well. What is his number? Is it 26? Is it 27? In the article, I have 3 years for $81 million. Still puts him in the top 7 among starting small forwards, or all small forwards, when it comes to salary here. So that's one thing. If he's not extended and you have the whole year to do so, then he'll be an unrestricted free agent, and he can go out and shop his own offer. But can you get a deal with Wiggins? Woj reported that there's going to be talks between his agents at CAA and the Warriors front office here. The second thing is going to be Jordan Poole. 3 years ago, or 2 years ago, Jordan Poole was averaging 8 points a game, 14, 15 minutes a game on that 15-50 team. Give the Warriors credit. A lot of people would have given up on young players like him. Goes to the G League, develops, spends the offseason during COVID, develops, and now he is one of the top 6 men in the year. You could start for him. Rookie extension eligible. We've talked about extension eligibles when you are not a non-max players. That usually gets you to the end of October, or right before the start of the season, when you get a deal done. What is the Jordan Poole number? ProFitX that we've used for some salary comps has him in that $23, $22 million range. I think him and Tyler Hero are going to be interesting. So the Poole extension, and you can read about it on the article online that will be up on Saturday. The Wiggins extension, those are your two priorities. B. Your priority A's: Gary Payton II, Kevon Looney. Unrestricted free agents. You do not have the rights. They are not restricted. You do not have the right to match on an offer sheet. Looney's got bird rights. Despite your high salary, you can go out and sign him for whatever you want. You want to go out and sign him for $10 million, $12 million? You want to give him a 3-year deal or a 4-year deal? Are you comfortable? James Wiseman is going to be kind of the, ready to start here. Is Looney more of that insurance policy? Is he a luxury or a priority? These are all the discussions that Golden State's going to have. I think he's a priority, and he might be eventually a luxury down the road. So he's got bird rights. You can exceed the cap to sign him. Payton II, he will not be on veteran minimum contracts anymore. He will not have to wait until the last day of the offseason to figure out if he's going to make a team here. He is going to get paid. What does getting paid mean here? He's got early bird rights. So the most that Golden State could pay is $10.9 million. But you have to sign him at a minimum 2 years, right? You can't give him a player option in the second year or a team option in the second year if you are going to use early bird rights. So if you want to sign him to a $7 million deal, it's got to be 2 for 14 or 3 for 21 or 4 for 28. It's got to be for a minimum, and he is a priority. I know you've got Moses Moody. I know you've got Kuminga kind of as your wings, but he just gives you a different dimension, a little bit similar to what Bruce Brown does in Brooklyn here, but he fits. So these two, 1A, priority. It will cost you, though. It will probably cost you an additional $60 million in luxury tax, but who gives a shit? You just won a championship and you can run this whole roster back. 1A, Looney and Payton. 1B, Wiggins and Poole. 1C, Draymond. He's extension eligible also. $25 million next year, $27 the following year on a team option. A player option, I'm sorry. You can extend him out. You can add 3 years on here off that $27 million number. You can go lower off that number. If you take the player option away and want to add on 4 years or even 3 years, this first year of the extension has to start at the player option. So it's got to start at $27 million. Or as I said, you can work off that and maybe you start them at $18 million or $19 million. Give them a 2-year, $40 million extension here. But as I said, the cost will start coming up, but that's the price to keep this roster together. And if you're going to pay $50 million and you're going to be in the finals and you have a chance to win a championship, and that arena is spitting out it's like an ATM machine spitting out money, and your ownership signs off on it, you go ahead and do it. As far as the rest of your bench, Otto Porter Jr., non-bird rights, Andre Iguodala, non-bird rights, Bijalika, non-bird rights. So what does that mean? 120% off the minimum salary. So for Porter, it's 2.8, or if you want to use some of your $6.4 million tax mid-level exception. You've got all your young guys coming back. Kuminga, Moody, big summer. Wiseman, the former number 2 pick. Is he healthy? Can he develop into a starter? I mean, we forget about him. I mean, you add him onto this roster, it will be scary. It's basically a trade without having to giving up anything here. So you've got your young cores, and remember all the time, we've always heard, well, they need another third guy, they need another second guy. Package the young kids, package Wiggins, go out and get Bradley Beal, go out and get Damian Lillard. You don't need to. You just showed everyone that you don't need a second franchise player or a third player. You've got a great baseline as far as young players and veterans, and you can keep on letting these young kids develop with a strong offseason here. Now they become rotation players. Now you don't have to rely on an Otto Porter or the veteran minimum players out there to keep on. That's your next foundation here. You've got 3 picks in the draft. You've got the 28th, I believe, pick in the draft. You've got 51. You've got 55. So what happens there? Does 28 become, is that a draft and stash player? Do you move out of the first round and pick up an asset? Remember, you owe a 2024 first to Memphis as part of the Iguodala trade. You've got, as I said, 51. I'm just pulling up there. 28. Jonathan Gavoni's got Jake LaRavia from Wake Forest. Versatile 4. Can stretch the floor. Shot 38%. 51 and 55, Michael Foster, G League Ignite, Ron Harper Jr. Maybe those are your two-way players. Maybe you move out, pick up future assets here. So there's not much to say about, we won 12 minutes here. There's not much to say about the Golden State Warriors. Congrats. They built the roster through the draft. The Wiggins trade certainly accelerated everything. 15 and 50 2 years ago. Playing team, you lose last year, and now you are the NBA World Champions.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.